Hi there, I'm Erica from Ever Educating, and this channel is all about teaching tips for new college instructors, and recently a lot of ed tech, online and hybrid tips as well. And today I want to talk about how I'm changing up my grading or approach to creating activities because I'm teaching, all freshmen, so freshman composition, and this is their first time where they're kind of having the college experience, and they're doing it in hybrid form where they can choose whether or not to come to class in person or to stay fully online. And so I have these 5 tips on how I'm doing my teaching approach and grading approach a bit differently. And so the first one I want to talk about is participation activities, because I do these all the time in my face-to-face classes, but in this case, since I knew that they're going to need to have a bit more motivation to get these activities done in time if they're never in my classroom physically, or if they're on Zoom and they're easily distracted. So 25% of their grade in my course comes from doing small participation activities. And so I do these every week. They're not always discussion forums, they can be other activities too, but it's a way to kind of keep them on track of doing the small things that will help them learn the skills and knowledge they need for the major units. And so I always do participation in my classes, but usually it'd be like maybe 20% max, sometimes less. And I include things like reading quizzes in there. But now I'm just doing every single week small activities for classwork or for homework to help keep my students motivated. Alongside these additional participation activities than usual, I'm also making my units much more structured and piecemeal. So while usually I would suggest to students to outline their paper before they start writing it, it wasn't a requirement necessarily in my past composition classes. Now this time though, because I've seen how my students can get so easily distracted or forget to do something for my class if I don't give them a very specific set thing to physically turn in, I'm giving them things to turn in constantly to help them move along through the unit. And so for example, in my first unit, rather than saying it'd be beneficial to do an outline before your paper, I actually had a class where I showed different designs for outlines, how they can approach it, and then I let them have for homework and then for class time work on your outline and then submit it to me. And so I can make sure that, okay, at least at this point they do have their topic, they do have a general sense of what they'll include in this first paper. And then going forward, I have, all right, we're going to work on drafting for the next little while, but then, all right, you're going to do a peer assessment in class, here, follow this guide, and you're going to turn in by the end of the class period. That way ensuring that their peer gets feedback from them to help them revise their paper. And then the next class period, all right, you're going to do a self-assessment. Here's a guide for that. And so having them do small things that help them with the overall unit and have them turn it in a timely manner throughout the weeks, rather than saying, okay, at the end, you have to have an outline and you have to have a peer assessment and you have to have a self-assessment, but it's up to you to decide what times those things happen. I feel like that's a dangerous slope when I'm having a lot of absences or students come in and out because their Wi-Fi stops working on Zoom, or they get confused about what day they're meeting. So there's always this element of what can I do to make sure they're staying on task. And so I've added more structure to my units as a way of doing this. And so, kind of going directly into that means I'm getting a lot more feedback than usual. So it is more work on my part, but I feel it's necessary to help make sure my students succeed in my class. And so what I'm doing is, okay, well, you turned in this outline. I'm not going to give you detailed, points for every single thing you wrote in it, but I can say, okay, yeah, this outline flows well, keep going, right? Good job. Or, I might have, actually, you make 7 points in this outline, but this paper is only 3 to 4 pages. There's no way you'll fit all this if you're giving enough detail about each of these points. I suggest cutting it down to maybe 2 to 4 of these points. And I think these 2 are definite points that you should mention. And, but it's up to you to decide, of course, what else you want to include. Okay, so having just small feedback for these smaller activities, and then of course major feedback for the final unit, project, right, the paper itself. And so, going along this vein, it's nice to have, okay, well, if a small activity my students have to turn in is the MLA properly cited 2 resources they're using in their paper, and they turn in participation points, then I can also see, okay, just so you know, that isn't proper MLA. You can make the changes way in advance to the actual unit being due, so you don't get points off at that point. And so doing these small activities, right, these more structured ones, these participation activities, is really helping giving them the pieces of the puzzle of their major unit, and they have feedback constantly, so hopefully at the end of the unit, really the only thing I have left to get feedback on is the full paper, and it should be stronger than it would have been as I usually taught it when I gave them so much independence in the work that they were doing. Now, with all these small activities to have students do and to get feedback on, you might be thinking, well, it's too much extra work, there's too much grading for me to do, I'm already so stressed with everything else. And definitely is true, right? I had to pick things carefully. But there's also tools you can use to help with automated grading. And so Edpuzzle, for example, which I have a video on below, allows me to have assigned videos with questions in it. And if it's multiple choice, then it grades it for me because I tell them what's the correct answer and what's the incorrect answer, right? And then if I use the exam function or the test and quizzes function on my LMS, again, I can use multiple choice questions there and get it automated feedback as well, automated grading as well, because I tell them this is the correct answer and these are the wrong ones. So there is that possibility if multiple choice kind of works for the activity you have designed, that you can have that graded automatically. Plus, you might just have if you did the activity, you get the participation points. You don't have to get every question right. I want to see that you made effort to go and do the activity. So you can decide which one do you want to approach as far as grading goes. And then, kind of moving off of that, there's one thing that really helps is when I'm having these students turn these things in and I'm seeing, all right, there's definitely confusion about this thing, or I went over this in class and I was getting a lot of questions about it, so I'm pretty sure that my absent students will really wonder about this. I don't want them to suffer in their grades because they had an absent for an unexpected reason, or because they just weren't able to pay attention as closely as I needed them to in that class period. So I create short videos, right? Because I don't record my full lessons, my full classes. But what I might do is, last week I talked about how to format an MLA paper, right? How to do a header, how to do the heading, how to do the hanging indent and the works cited. And I went over that in class step by step. But I had absent students, and I can tell some students were confused. So I went home and I did a quick recording, screen recording of me doing the exact same thing I did in class. It took me 5 minutes, and then I uploaded it to my LMS. Okay? I went over how to use the library databases, how to find full text, how to find the correct publishing date, how to create that citation with that cite button. Well, I went home, created a short video, posted on the Canvas LMS, right? And so there are ways that I create these short videos based off of, I can tell there's confusion here, or I know this is a really important point to do well on their units. So I want to make sure that they can actually look back and watch that moving forward if they need to. And so adding this element to my Canvas, I think is going to be very helpful, long term. Something really important to keep in mind is grading with grace this semester. It's very stressful. Everybody's anxious, right? People are getting sick, or they have family members who are getting sick. And so for me, I'm trying to help by giving them a lot of structure and help push them along throughout the semester and do well on the units. But there's also this element of, I have the time bank late policy that I mentioned in this video, right? And so how can you grade with grace is something to really consider as well. And so if you like this video, do give a thumbs up and let me know. And here's some more videos on the screen that you might find of interest.